everybody, welcome. I'm Daniel G. Garza, and this is another episode of Put It Together live stream. We are here every Saturday morning at 12 p.m. Pacific Standard Time. Thank you for joining us. All our friends on Facebook, LinkedIn, and Twitter, if you do us a favor and share this on your page so that other folks can watch along with you. If you're on YouTube, will you scroll down, hit that subscribe button, and smash that bell so you can get notified every time we have a new show on the air. And remember that here at Little Mexican Productions, Inc., we have Mondays, horoscopes, on Wednesdays, Kristen and Daniel, Fridays, the Card Devo, and on Saturdays, Put Together live stream. But you want to hit that bell because every once in a while we have special shows that pop up and you want to get notified when those come up. On this week's episode, I'm really excited. I know, y'all say that I'm excited all the time, but this time I have some really good friends of mine coming on the show to talk about something that has a topic that's been on my mind for a couple of years now. And we want to talk about disability. For those of you that have followed my story over the years know that I was on disability until 2019. And when I finally came off disability, it was a little scary. There was a lot of stress. There was anxiety. I'd been on it for a long time and I didn't know what I was going to do. But luckily, I had a lot of support around me. I had a lot of friends. I was prepared. All that volunteer work that I did, all those workshops, all those trainings, everything that I worked on helped me get through it. But I found some of my friends had gone through it too. And oddly enough, it wasn't until recently that I found out that these three friends had gone through some similar issues. So I'm going to introduce them. Let me get their bios up and I'm going to bring them up one by one. First off, we have Mr. Brady Dale. I love Brady Dale. Brady Dale Etzkorn-Morris was forced into disability in 2015 after having a Whipple procedure done to remove a precancerous tumor on his pancreas. After many hospitalizations due to the resulting chronic pancreatitis, I can never say that word, and becoming a diabetic, Brady took his time to use the social media platform to begin advocating for issues pertaining to living with HIV. Toward the end of 2021, Bruce Richmond, founding executive director of Prevention Access Campaign, reached out to Brady to offer him a job as the executive assistant for PAC Global Operations. After thinking about it for a few months, Brady accepted the position in February of this year and began transitioning from disability. Brady resides in Nashville, Tennessee with his husband, Joshua. Hi, Brady.
Hey, Daniel. It's a pleasure to be here.
Thank you for being here. Next, I'm going to talk about Charles. Charles Sanchez is very busy being good at a lot of things, especially being gay. A writer openly living with HIV, he is contributing editor for thebody.com, and his work has been featured in leading publications like Pause Magazine, HuffPost Queer Voices, PositivelyAware.com, Them.us, and more. Charles' groundbreaking web series, Mercy, a musical comedy about a person who is living with HIV and isn't sick, sad, or dying, garnered him awards at the official Latino Short Film Festival and America's Rainbow Film Festival, among others. His lifeline dedication to the arts and activism has been recognized on Healthline.com's list of HIV honors. The most influential voice in Pause Magazine's Pause 100. When he's not writing, performing, baking, or generally making the world a better place, Charles can be seen charming audiences and his guests on At Home with his popular Instagram live talk show, The Body, featuring prominent members of the HIV and LGBTQ community. Hi, Charles.
Hi there. I'm being like Brady. Hi, how you doing? How's everything going? Hey.
And I'm going to read his, unfortunately, Zeke Garcia Murton was supposed to be with us today, but he's having some technical issues, but I want to read his bio anyway. Zeke Garcia Murton, with opportunity comes responsibility. Using his background in HIV Biomedical Healthcare, Zeke waves compassionate, non-judgmental healthcare advocacy and support through a panoramic, equitable lens. With insight from his 18-year career in HIV healthcare, he articulates a mesmerizing tale of personal growth and perspective surviving copious medical diagnoses and major surgeries to repair extensive health trepidations. Zeke doesn't just speak on health disparities, he's lived them. His studies of community health literacy enable him to simplify the science of why he create the patterns we do, where they come from, and how to change them to amplify results. Zeke negotiates a design for living concerning the implementation of strategies designed to reduce barriers and provisions for health outcomes across the HIV care continuum of care and improve the quality and cultural competence. Zeke brings a record of accomplishments of integrity, creativity, and passion to every event, and he brings a sense of style, and that I can vouch for. Hopefully he can get connected, and if he does, we'll bring him right into the conversation. But first of all, these are three of my favorite people in advocacy. They are really cool friends. I love them dearly. So thank you, first of all, for taking the time to be with us this morning.
Oh, happy to be here.
Happy to be here as well.
So talking about
Sorry, his voice. I'm sorry. Brady Dale does not talk like that. Brady Dale is like, "Hi, how y'all doing? Hey." But then he gets on here. He's like, "Hey, bro, Brady Dale."
For those of you watching, as you can tell, we've known each other for a long time. So we're gonna try to make this a serious show, but no promises guaranteed.
Charles always gets me in trouble. Always.
I've been on his show, and it never goes the way that I want it to go. So, ever.
Well, that's not your show.
Yes, so I learned that very quickly. By the way, I want to let everybody know that please join the conversations. If you have any questions or comments for anybody on the panel, please join us in. If you don't mind, I'm gonna tell my story really quick, just so that we can jump into how we all came into disability. For those of you that follow my story, I've told you before, it was September 2000. I was diagnosed with AIDS. I was 110 pounds, 108 T cell count, very sick. They didn't think I was going to make it. I still joke around and say that they gave me disability because they thought I was going to last long anyway. And haha, spoiler alert, here I am 22 years later. But I was so sick that's how in 2000, if you were diagnosed with AIDS, you just automatically went into disability. There was no real questions asked. And then in I'll jump into that in a bit. But then that's how I got into it. So let's start with Brady. Brady, how was your story? How did your story start?
Yeah, and it's funny you said a lot of folks when they find out I was on disability, they thought they immediately go, "Oh, is it because of your AIDS diagnosis?" And I'm like, "No, it has nothing to do with me being HIV positive and AIDS. What happened to me was in 2012, I started having a lot of really bad abdominal issues. I kept going to the doctor, and they kept doing ultrasounds and everything, and they were like, everything looks fine. And I'm like, y'all, I've had this body for 36 years. Something's going on. So I kept having to press, and finally they decided to go in and do exploratory surgery. When they opened me up, they found out that my gallbladder had actually died and was necrotic and rotting inside of me. So as they're trying to clean all that out, the doctor just happens to notice this little nodule tumor on the head of my pancreas. So they went ahead and biopsied it and sent me home. I recovered from that surgery. I was outpatient, went home the next day. And then 2 weeks later, I get a call saying, "Hey, Brady, this little tumor that we found is actually precancerous. And it's the kind of cancer that normally when we can detect it, you have enough time to get your affairs in order." They're like, "But since we found it this early, we're going to do what's called a Whipple," which meant I went in and they removed a third of my pancreas, part of my stomach, and most of my small intestine. And they told me at that time that I was always going to be frail, that my health would always be poor. And I just kind of took it with a grain of salt. I was in the hospital for about 3 weeks after that surgery, but then I went right back to work. I was not going to let the doctors tell me what I was and was not going to do. But by 2015, I had been hospitalized about 8 or 9 times, 2 to 3 weeks at a time. And I realized that my pancreas was going to be in charge of my life, or that's what I thought at the time. So I went ahead and started the disability application process in 2015. Did not actually even get approved for it till 2017. And that's a whole other story about, the agony of not having any income and how to survive, especially living with HIV and these other new issues that I'm going on and not having any kind of income. So it was a really stressful time. But finally, then in 2017, my disability came through. I got some back pay, and that's how I wound up on disability.
Cool. Thank you for sharing that. How about you, Charles?
Well, mine is somewhere in between. I actually, in 2003, I was living in Little Rock, Arkansas, and I was sick with what I thought was a really stubborn case of bronchitis. And my roommate at the time came and found me on the floor of our apartment, blue from lack of oxygen. She took me to the emergency room. And 3 weeks later, I woke up in the hospital, and my family was around me. My family, came to see me suffering or whatever from Arizona, and that's how I was diagnosed with AIDS. And while I was in this drug-induced coma for 3 weeks, my parents did all the paperwork to get me signed up for everything. So when I woke up, the machine was already in motion for me to be on disability and Medicare and Medicaid and ADAP and everything else. So by the time I actually got dismissed from the hospital, I think I had got my first check like maybe a month later. Wow. So it was already happening.
See, when I was diagnosed in Houston and September, and then I moved down to South Texas in December. It wasn't until January that when I went in for services that they were like, did you already report to Social Security? And I was like, for what? And they're like, so you can get disability. And I was like, what's that? And it wasn't until they walked me through the process. But I was so sick that they did the interview over the phone. I didn't even have to go to the office. They just mailed everything and signed it. Again, joking, they didn't think I was going to make it. Let me start with this question, because disability, for me, it's a big word and it's become a trigger word. What does the word disability mean to y'all?
Well, it is a triggering word because I on one hand, it was something I was so grateful for. It really helped me through for a time. But it also is something that is not considered. I feel like people, when you tell them you're on disability, you're automatically in a suspicious column, especially when you're someone who doesn't present as disabled. For whatever that means, you don't present as whatever somebody's picture of what disabled looks like. So, like I walk, I talk, and I dress well. So I think, so for automatically, even though I was having physical problems, it took me a long time to recover and figure out how to be a person living with AIDS, with HIV, because AIDS was my diagnosis as well. And my T cell count was 4. I win. But so I think it is like that. There is a stigma of its own of just having of the word disability, of the word disabled, has its own brand of disability of stigma.
Absolutely. I mean, I have to agree with that, because when the doctors told me, that I was going to have to apply for disability, growing up in northeastern Arkansas on a farm, I grew up with a very strong work ethic. Whatever needed to be done had to be done right then. If not, people would die, animals would die. I mean, the work had to be done. But then for me to be 36 and hear a doctor say I'm going to be disabled, I'm like, immediately these things in my head started spinning like, okay, I'm not going to be able to be a contributing member to society anymore. I'm not going to be able, and that's what, we're raised, and I hate that it is this way, but if you're not able to produce in America, you're seen as less than, you're othered, and people make a lot of assumptions. Like you said, if you don't have a presenting disability, like, oh, well, why, you're out here making a flower bed. Why can't you go in and do an 8-hour job, every day? So there's just a lot of misconceptions when people hear the word disability. They, and I'd internalized a whole lot of that, thinking, I'm going to be worthless now. And I just could not accept that. And it had a really negative effect on my psyche. I was already dealing with having to go through everything with being, an HIV diagnosis. But then on top of this as well, packed on the mental gymnastics that was going on in my head, trying to keep myself lifted up and my keeping my self-value or my self-worth was really hard during that time. And I didn't. I lost myself during that time, because even though I was having pancreatic issues, I started hitting the bottle even harder, and doing, methamphetamine, which I'm sure was great for my pancreas and my body during all that time. So it had a big impact on me, more mentally than anything.
Yeah, I believe, and what you both are saying is like, yes. There was the mental when I was that sick, and for those of you watching, there is such a thing as AIDS brain. When you're diagnosed with AIDS and your brain and you're at that level, it does affect you mentally, just like chemo brain is a real thing. I believe that when being that sick and somebody said you're disabled now, that my mind said, okay, so from now on, all I can do is volunteer, do a little bit of things here and there. I'm never going to be really, I was 30, and I'm like, I'm never going to live out my dreams. So I'm just going to nibble and bite wherever I can and try to live the best I can. And then there's the physical. Our minds are so powerful that my mind can say, no, you're disabled. The doctors say you're disabled. The paper says you're disabled. So my body was only able to accomplish so much. And then the spirit totally disconnected. The spirit, for me, the spirit was like, well, if the mind's not going to work and the body's not going to cooperate, I'm out. And I also fell into alcohol and drugs for a while. So I can go ahead.
No, me too. I was just saying me too. Yeah, the three of us are the three drunk amigos. But I think too, on those occasions when you then had to defend, no, I'm really disabled. And then you're telling yourself as you're telling other people that you're disabled, like you're reinforcing that word and that definition of yourself. And even if you're doing other things, even if you're able to do other things, it's still that it's a real mindfuck to be continually telling yourself and telling other people disabled.
Yeah.
And then dealing with other people's perception, like, you'll see social media posts and stuff where people say, will make comments like, oh, these folks on disability, they're out buying these steaks in front of me at the grocery store. And so all of a sudden, I'm like questioning everything that I do. Like, am I worthy of buying a steak for dinner tonight? Am I worthy of buying this for me, for my house? Am I worthy of buying this gift for someone for their birthday? So there's just constantly in your own head about what it means to live with a disability.
Yeah. Let's talk, because I remember the first year of disability is after my diagnosis, when I met my first boyfriend, and to have that conversation, he was a bartender, and I walked into the bar with some friends and met him, and of course, alcoholic, falling in love with the bartender, boy meets boy, and get drunk together. Classic story. But I remember that first conversation of, well, what do you do? I'm on disability and trying to just, like you say, justify that and why I was disabled. But yet here you are at a bar having a cocktail and dancing. You know what I mean? Like even for me, it was kind of like, how do I? But then the doctors kept signing my papers, so I was like, there must be something wrong with me. Does that make sense?
Well, there's also that thing of, for me, it's easier to tell somebody I have HIV than to tell somebody I'm on disability.
Absolutely, yeah.
Because here's a question. First of all, I want to say Paul is watching us from Sicily, Italy. So hello, Italy.
Wow.
But his question is, as we're talking about this, is it necessary to define oneself as disabled?
Yeah, you see, it wasn't a personal decision for me. I didn't. For income and medical reasons, I had to be classified as disabled. That is what society was labeling me as. Yeah. Even though in my head, I didn't feel like I was disabled, but I had to somehow shift my mindset that, well, apparently, like you're saying, apparently I am disabled because that's what the doctors are telling me. I do have these physical limitations, so apparently I am. So I didn't think it was really necessary for me. I didn't define myself as disabled, but it was more of just a clinician or clinical or a medical kind of terminology more than the way I saw myself.
Well, I think too, when we talk about disability, people think of it as this free money. Right. And first of all, it's not that much money. like you really are not. It's not a Rockefeller salary. They're really just giving you a bare minimum of what you can just scrape by with. But for me, the biggest benefit was the health insurance, was being able to then qualify to be able to pay for the thousands of dollars that a month that our medications cost, not to mention doctor's visits and everything else. That for me was like the biggest thing. Like I could get a job, but I maybe couldn't get a job that was going to give me the kind of benefits that I really need to be able to survive and keep I got addicted to these other kinds of drugs to keep my HIV at bay. So that to me, like, I think people really need to understand that about disability. Like, first of all, it's not a lot of money. It's not like you're living off the high on the hog. And it's more, for me, it was much more about the medical benefits and those things that had I gotten a full-time job at the time, I would have been like, I don't think I can get a job that's going to give me benefits.
Because in 2005-ish, 2006, I don't know if it's still available, but if you were on disability, you had like a 7-month period that you could go and work and see if you could sustain a job, and they allowed you to make as much money. I don't know if it was just a Texas thing or was it nationwide?
No. It's called, they have a federal thing too, and it's called the Ticket to Work program.
Yes.
And it's called, they call it 9 months plus 3. Because I guess that's how they, instead of calling it a year, they call it 9 months plus 3. Because it's the government and they have to make everything harder.
Yeah. And because I did that, and I ended up working for one of the nonprofits in Houston. And that really, I think that was the beginning of trying to like, can I do this? Because I went back to school trying to get my degree, and there was a lot of times, but I would go back to the doctor, and the doctor's like, no, I'm going to sign this for you. And I'm like, oh, okay, so I can't do this. Like, does that make sense?
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm just picturing the doctor going, oh, no, girl. you still stick.
You stick.
Okay, so here's another comment, and I want to see what you guys think about this. So it says, yes, society, but not you. There's more to us than statuses. Technically, I'm a retired expat from Iceland, but I do not define myself as much. And yes, I agree. Now where I am now, and we're going to get into where we are now in just a minute, but we're still talking about at the time, when doctors and maybe our medical records, case workers and our own minds. I want to make sure that we leave this very clear for people, that for anybody out there who is wanting to go off disability and is ready to make that transition, kind of to say it's a state of mind. You really have to have a conversation with yourself. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does. And then like you were saying too, though, it's the journey to go back to work even though there were other opportunities before I did start to transition back into the workforce, like Charles was saying, they didn't offer benefits that, I wasn't going to be able to do, I wasn't going to have, was I still going to be able to do Ryan White? Was I still going to be on Medicare? All of these things that actually are keeping me alive, because I know that I don't have the income for this. How does it affect all that? So it's more than just, how am I doing physically and mentally, but it's also literally like, how am I going to survive, like pay my bills and make sure that I'm getting the medical treatment that I need to still be here. And to me, that was my biggest fear of going, thinking about going off with disability, is how am I going to afford health insurance in the United States of America? That was my biggest fear.
Charles, anything to add to that?
No, that was what kept me from even pursuing anything myself. Like, I had the government, and like we said, we're going to get to this, but the government came to me and said, you're off disability. So, and had that had happened the way it happened at the time it happened, I don't know that, because I was so paralyzed with fear about how am I going to be able to go see my doctor. And I'm spoiled. Like, I want to go, I want to be out with my doctor. I don't want to like go to a clinic or go to downgrade my care, because I've been on this. That's the one thing that that was A+ in my life on disability was that I had A+ healthcare.
Right. Right.
So when they say Medicare for all, Medicare's great. Yeah, Medicare should be for all, everybody. It's great.
Absolutely. Yeah.
So I want to remind everybody who's watching it, this is put together live stream. My guests today are Charles Sanchez and Brady. Is that how you say it? Etzkorn?
Etzkorn. Yeah. Good old German name that nobody's ever heard of before.
Named Brady Dale. So I'm going to say Brady Dale.
Just call me Brady Dale. It's a whole lot easier. Rolls off the tongue easier that way.
For those of you watching today, we're talking about what happens after disability, and we invite you to ask questions, make comments, and join in the conversation. So we've been talking about how we got there, and we have one more comment before we move on. He says, "I appreciate that it's hard to face our limitations. It must be very tough." I think that's a good segue into this new part. So I changed doctors. My doctor retired, and he basically sold his practice to this new doctor, this new go get him doctor, like choo, I'm new in town. And he was going to revolutionize the way we got treatment. And I was like, yay. So I go to him, and right from the beginning, I didn't like his bedside manner. I was so used to my doctor for 7 years, and it's hard to transition doctors. And right in that spot is when this is at the beginning of 2019. The new government that we had at the time was doing a big cleanup of disability, and I was one of the people that got reassessed. And I got the letter, and after years of being on disability, I just like, well, here's the letter. Are you going to sign it? And he said, no, I'm not going to sign it. I want you to get evaluated. And I wrote a really bad Yelp review on him, and it wasn't because of that. It was because of the way he was. I'm going to clarify, because he talked to some of my friends about how I bashed him, but it was not for that. It was not for that. And I'm going to clarify that in a minute. It was for the way he was as a doctor. I just didn't like him as a doctor. But it took a little while. Once I got the letter that said, you have until October, and that's your last check. And I was like, oh, shit. So when I got that letter, I got home, got my mail, cried for a couple of hours, immediately got on the phone after a couple hours of crying, called friends, and I said, hey, remember that job you offered me? I'm ready. Hey, do you still have that part-time gig? I'm ready to go. Hey, do you need still help in your office? When can I come and help you? And I was on it. It was Thursday when I got the letter. No, it was Friday when I got the letter. And by Monday, I was already doing some odd jobs to make money, because that's how quick my brain had to work. But I think at that point, for me personally, it was time for somebody to kick me out of the nest. So for that, I do thank this doctor. I don't like him, but I'm glad that he saw the potential that I had accumulated in myself and bandage off the label.
It wasn't the doctor that saw your potential. It was your higher power that was looking out for you and went, you know what, here, we're ready for you. We've got this all already built for you.
And we'll talk about in a minute about where we are now, but that was my coming out. That was my coming out story.
Well, and then and you mentioned a little bit this, Daniel, it is, we've mentioned and talked about, the way that we think about and looked at ourselves being disabled or being on disability, but going out and trying to date and try to find relationships, while you're on disability, and then not only that, but friendships. So if you're just trying to create a new friendship, is, immediately, as soon as, I would say, and is you introduce somebody and they're like, oh, well, I'm the professor of law at Vanderbilt University. And I'm like, well, hi, I'm Brady and I'm on disability. Immediately it just will kill any kind of prospects. So it made me want to isolate more. I did not want to go out and try to meet new people or form new friendships. It really, but that was also another aspect as to, and I'm not saying it's a good reason, but it's another reason that kind of pushed me out of the nest and wanting to go back to work as well. Because I got tired of saying I'm on disability.
Before we continue to Charles' story, surprise! Zeke is here.
Yay!
Can you
all hear me?
We
We can
can.
hear you.
Okay, yeah. So I don't think you're going to be able to see me. I don't know what's going on there. But good afternoon, everybody. I was able to listen to your openings. So
Cool. So Charles, if you don't mind, Charles will tell us about his coming out part, and then we'll go to Zeke and catch up on his story.
What I wanted to just kind of piggyback first on what Brady said about when you're meeting somebody for the first time and you're dating or you're a friendship, and I used to deflect with humor instead of especially if they had a really lofty job, if they had something very like that, like a professor, I would be like, oh, well, since the accident, I can hold this ball now. And I would deflect it with humor, and then they would laugh, and then I would get out of it, right? Then I wouldn't have to say what I was, then I could just be charming and funny. But,
Yes.
anyway, so yeah, mine happened last year where I got a letter from disability in the spring of 2021 telling me that I was under review because they said it looked like I had been making too much money, that I had reached the threshold. And so I was under review. But the paperwork, when the government sends you, they'll send you 7 pieces of paper to say, like, thanks for visiting the website.
Yeah. That they do.
Utterly ridiculous. But so it was all these packets of papers telling me that I was under review. And then finally in October, they just cut me off. They said, like, you have been making too much money since 2017. You are no longer qualified for disability. You will no longer be getting a check. And not only that, but you owe us $85,000 in back pay. And please send us a check.
Yeah,
I'll get right on that because I've been keeping all that big bounty of government disability money just back there. I've just got it.
yeah.
Anyways, so that's what happened to me. That was last fall.
So before we move on, I want Zeke to get a chance. I know we can't see Zeke, but we can hear him. Zeke, do you mind telling us? I know we're going to cut your time, but how you got into it and how you got out of it.
Yeah, so my story is very similar to the testimonies, really, that you guys shared. So thank you for being so, sharing with candor. And, it can be a vulnerable type of a share. Same thing. So in 1995, I was diagnosed with HIV. And I did pretty well. I stuck to my treatment, even though it was, just kind of like treat it and go. I ended up moving geographically, and that's one of the main barriers I encounter with a lot of people that I work with. There was a lull in my treatment, and I was diagnosed with AIDS in 2008. And so I remember vividly, sitting by my sister's house with like a little nice French door window, calling social security disability so that I could figure out what I was going to do. Of course, before that, my doctor's like, I think I said, when can I go back to work? And she's like, you're not going to work for a while. I didn't realize that my situation physically, people around me could tell that I was not in a good way. So I did end up linking up to Social Security. That helped me. There was a lot of fear, towards the latter part. I started to feel a little bit better, feel healthy. I had other health disparities that were kind of occurring in unison. It took me about maybe 4 or 5 years to really start to feel my oats again, as one would say. And then I started volunteering, like you said, Daniel, trying to immerse myself, switch my career from a surgical technician to kind of trying to give back. I think that a lot of us tend to go through that, especially when people express kindness, in the types of areas that we go to. And then I thought, maybe I could do this. It was more a test of how much I can do with my physicality not being up to par. And then I stayed the course, and then a little bit kind of like to fast forward to what Charles was saying. I worked. I got a ticket to work, so I went back to work part-time at a great institution that I worked with for about 18 years. And then all of a sudden, I got overpaid. It was like a longer month, and I missed it. So it was from 2019. So I got a letter in the mail saying that I owed $23,000. Please, put it in the bank. Write me a check. And I was like, okay, that's not going to happen. It was an interesting situation because we all have like, ebbs and flows in life. And then I find a correlation with my recovery. So there's another commonality that we have. You start to kind of learn to trust the process, and the universe kind of takes over, and you just kind of do what you can, you show up, and you continue to move forward, just doing the best you can. So what happened was that I was at a position where my husband and I had just bought a house, and everything was going in the right direction. Then here I am with this new life change. And I was just very lucky that with perseverance and sticking, to the roads that's traveled, I was actually, unbeknownst to me, here I am, this disabled person. And yeah, disability carries a very big weight on individuals, at least for me. I could deal with the HIV, I could deal with the AIDS, but the disability part just didn't fit for me. Yeah. It was really strange. It was a real struggle. I finally reached acceptance, and then lo and behold, right to like last year, I left the position that I was in for, the world changes, and you kind of stand there, and everything around you kind of goes in a different direction. So somebody said to me, Zeke, maybe you're needed somewhere else. And the trajectory was there. I was at a point where I was broke and didn't have a job at all, not even a part-time job. I had no check, and I trusted the process. I did my thing. I applied for this great position, and that fear was taken away from me, because I don't know that I would have actually had the courage to take the plunge and go on full time, because I didn't know if I could handle it, right? And so here we are, very blessed, and just being able to be of service and find individuals that are going through the same thing. The fear is real. You think about your livelihood, and sometimes the universe just has to kind of, push you off the precipice. So that's kind of where I'm at.
So for everybody watching, one of the reasons that I chose these three folks to be on the panel today, first of all, they're three of my favorite people. They're out in the community. They've been doing a lot for as long as I've known them. One of the things that I can relate to was I started to make a career out of my diagnosis. I was like, if this is who I am, HIV, and it's never going to go away, how can I? And this is my conversation. I don't know about you guys, but I have these conversations with like the other me. So there's me, and there's me who's HIV, me, the one who has cancer, the alcoholic, the drug addict. And we had a meeting when HIV came up, and I was like, look, dude, if you're going to live in my body, you're paying rent. This is not going to be free. So I don't know that I consciously did it, but over the years, I was preparing myself to do what I'm doing now. I mean, my career now is I'm a language justice consultant for the National Minority AIDS Council. I'm part of Positively Fearless. I travel talking about HIV and cancer, and I get paid for being sick, which is really what I tell people in my jokes. I'm like, I get paid for being sick, and that's kind of cool. Do you think that you subconsciously were preparing for where you are now?
I know personally, absolutely. I mean, it's what I did to try to improve my own mental health. It's like, because I'm not going to be worthless, but if I'm going to be stuck in my bed, I do have these social media platforms. So let me get on my phone, let me pull out my laptop, and let me just talk about living with HIV. And through that, I was able to network and I met you amazing people, but it also, I got to learn, what is the importance of advocacy, how to advocate properly, the importance of saying this versus that. And if it weren't for me taking that opportunity to, while I'm healing and my pancreas, my body is trying to get back, in sync with everything, when I was ready to come off a disability, I had those connections and I had that network that led me to this job. And same as what Zeke was just saying, when my husband and I, when we got back together and started dating, he knew that I was on disability. So God bless him for agreeing to date me, and then especially agreeing to marry me, knowing or thinking at the time that, all I'm ever going to be bringing in is $1,200 a month for the rest of my life. That's it. So God bless him that he did not let that be a deterrent in our relationship. But then we bought a house, and I'm sitting here thinking, like, we had kind of a timeline of, 5-year plan, 10-year plan, 15, like what we want to see, improvements around the house, things we wanted to do together. And, all of those things that we wanted to do was on a very long time scale. It was like, I'm like, oh my God, I'm going to be 90 years old before I'm going to get to see another beach again, with my husband there with me, or before we get a deck put on the back of our house, things like that. So those kind of wants and those kind of desires was another impetus to, help me and guided me to get back into the workforce.
Cool. Charles?
Yeah, I don't really feel like I was planning it that way. Like I don't have that sense of I certainly didn't like, oh, I need to go into work right now. Like I don't have that American thing. Like I have a good work ethic. I work hard, but I don't think that work is the coolest thing ever. And I know this is America. We're all about work, but I'm not like that. But what I actually feel like my higher power was taking care of me. What had happened was I started writing for publications. All I had to do was do a web series. All I had to do was produce a web series, and then all of a sudden people started to know who I was, and then I started getting some writing opportunities. The Body brought me on as a contributing editor in 2017, and so I was getting a monthly check from them. But once I got this scary news in the fall from disability, from Social Security, I reached out to the Body as well as some other publications that I write for, but the Body is my bread and butter. And Miles Helfland, the executive editor at the Body, said to me, like, Charles, we've been underpaying you for years, so now we're just going to start paying you what you should get paid. And then I've been able to negotiate other situations based off that. Like, oh, this is what I'm worth. This is what I have a basis to say, like, oh, as a writer, as a contributing editor, as a content creator, I'm worth this. So then when other people say, like, oh, well, we're going to give you $100 to write that, I'm like, no, sweetie, that's not what I'm worth. And I needed to hear it from somebody else. I needed to hear that, to get that information from higher ups. But
how about for you, Zeke?
Yeah, I think I'm going to write a little bit on everybody's coattails because we seem to have very similar stories. So when I talk about the gift of perspective in my life, that's through recovery. That's true recovery. And unfortunately for me, it's a double-edged sword. But I can take the tools and I kind of mirror them with what it is in my work ethic part of my life. I'm the product of a migrant family, by the way. So we worked all our lives when we were young. If you wanted, what have you. Very, very good, robust Spanish family that I'm from. Now, when I was a kid, when I circumverted, I had two very good friends. And we lost them. One of them passed away from anal cancer, and the other one pneumonia. And I carried that with me because I was like, why was I the one that was lucky enough to stay around, right? And that self stigma and all that good stuff. Why am I here and not them? That was something that I carried with me. Something that was really remarkable now that we talk about Rapid Start and all these treatment initiations, I can look back to what my higher power did for me even before I found him. And so I was a Rapid Start, a product of Rapid Start, decades ago. I started treatment on the same day. The powers that be just kind of took over, and then here I am. So like when I talked about that in my bio, I used certain cliches to get me through the day. Like there's nothing lost in God's economy, and that with the opportunities that I have to pay for it. So for my work, definitely I was kind of put in a position where I learned how to disclose my own status to lift somebody else up. And so the trajectory for me is that in hindsight, I was like, wow, I'm disclosing freely. And it hit me. Like I've actually told another person, but really it was about paying it forward. And maybe because of the little bit of a control person that I am, I was like, maybe if I can change the trajectory of this person and maybe they won't do the things that I did that hence the AIDS diagnosis, things like that. So when I go to work, I have my little mantra and I do my meditations and I'm like, send me one. Send me just one today and then maybe we can make a difference. So I think that the way that my life just kind of peaked at a point right now. I'm still kind of young, but to be able to have the opportunity to give that freely to individuals that happen to be in my realm, I think that's magnificent. I don't call it work. I get paid for it, but it's there's no word for it. Just being able to see somebody else thrive. I think that's tremendous.
I can totally agree with that. Like it's I love what I do now, and that's a huge difference. I think that disability gave me the opportunity to grow into who I was meant to be in all aspects, both all three aspects: entertainment, advocacy, and my energy and spiritual work. But I definitely learned that through that. So I agree with you. So we're at the point of the show where I like to ask my guests to share some words of wisdom with our viewers. So I'll start in alphabetical. Brady, what words of wisdom do you have for people watching?
Me, wisdom. Right. Well, let's see. Let me just say what I do, my job today, like I'm very fortunate that I work with Prevention Access Campaign and get to work in helping use the science of U equals U to help increase treatment access and increase viral load suppression capabilities and all that around the world. What I do is still very much feels like work, but it is very gratifying work. So, if I had any words of wisdom, we are our own worst enemy. And it's really the stories that we tell ourselves, the narratives that we run, in our own heads about our own selves that are the most damaging. Granted, I could meet someone on the street that I didn't even know, or even if it was a friend or family member that said something hurtful, what I would tell myself would be 100 times more hurtful and hinder me and hold me back more than what anyone else could say. So it really was me getting to a place through my higher power and in my recovery, being, staying away from alcohol, that made me have to shift that own self narrative. And once I was able to have positive conversations with myself, and learned how to lift my own self up, starting from in here, then it began showing outwardly. And and not only that, it helped my relationships with all of my family, with my friends. I have what I feel like I have more real friendships now. My circle now is a lot smaller, but it's a whole lot stronger.
Cool. Charles?
Well, first of all, I think it's charming that, Daniel, you call what you do entertainment. I'm kidding.
Oh, the hate.
But I think
it's love. That's all love.
But I think that's piggybacking off what Brady just said. I think we are our own worst enemy. And I was going to say, like, it's learning how to take a compliment and, like, take it. Oh, and it usually takes me 3 days to actually hear what someone said to me 3 days ago. Like, oh, that person 3 days ago told me that I was a leader in the HIV community. Yeah. And I had no idea about that, but I didn't hear it when they were saying it. But then go like, oh, I have to take that. And even like I have a Wheaties box. You can't really see it, but I have a Wheaties box above my bed or above my desk. That's Greg Louganis signed it. And he said, like, Charles, believe in yourself, Greg Louganis. And every once in a while when I'm working, because I don't know about, writing is a solitary, it's really hard because you're in your own head as you're writing and you're critiquing yourself as you're writing, and it's hard. Every once in a while I just look up, I'm like, oh, thanks, Greg. Believe in myself. Right. So yeah, believe in yourself. Take those compliments and make them feed the good parts of you. Think of yourself as being your assets outweigh your character defects. That's something new that I'm trying to incorporate. I haven't gotten there yet, but I think that if we can think of ourselves as being our best parts are more important and our strongest parts than the things that we hate about ourselves, which are always huge.
Yeah, thank you. And Zeke, what words of wisdom do you have?
Yeah, I think I kind of spilled that earlier. So really to trust the process, to be kind to yourself at the end of the day, and to practice humility in my world. I live with chronic pain. I noticed that somebody in the comments mentioned, why do we have to call it disability? Because it's a situation that you're in. I'm not the same person that I was when I was initiating this life that I needed at that point. I am not a naysayer of Social Security disability because it helped me and my husband through the interim of that, right? But then you grow from that. And I think that one of the things I take with me is to just kind of continue to remember that and remember where I was and how fortunate I am that I am where I am today. I still struggle, with HIV and aging. Of course, the chronic pain, that's really what gets me. But, I get up, you do what you got to do. Do what you got to do. 97% of it is showing up and smiling, be grateful and be kind, and just try to learn and absorb, remain teachable, and trust the transference that you get with every individual that you come across, especially in our field. And throughout your life, you only get one opportunity to make a first impression, and you might as well let it, it's going to define you in that person's mind, which is irrelevant. But as long as you know who you are, you stand your ground, you're honest, you practice integrity, and you surround yourself with like-minded people like this panel, your time that we have that is fleeting here on earth, that's really where I would be able to pass anything forward. If it was like a minimal type of thing, just travel, enjoy your life, remember to laugh, and don't take life so seriously. This too shall pass. And if somebody says, oh, I can't change, I say to them, I'm a firm believer that people do change. But if you're the one that's naysaying yourself, then, you're never going to really get out of that rut.
Yeah, most definite. I want to share just my words of wisdom. I usually don't do it, but I was quoted something I said a couple of years ago. Is like, life in the world will give us labels, but they only have value when we accept them. And that was what we started talking about at the beginning of the show. Is I accepted that at the beginning, 22 years ago, and I accepted that I was, in this case, disabled, until somebody said, you might want to revisit that. Like, you might want to rethink that. And then it was that inner look and sitting down as I turned 50, and I was like, okay, let me, like, this album of labels that I had accumulated in 50 years, and started taking out the ones that expired. And fortunately for me, disabled had expired. And I am very grateful of where I am today, which leads me to the final question before we end the show. Let me just say this before we continue. Going up disability, if you're on disability, going up disability is not for everybody. Absolutely. Please think it through. Please talk to your doctors, talk to your therapist, talk to your family. Make sure that you're in a body, mind, and spirit aligned place to do this, because it does mess with your mind. You want to make sure that your body's ready for it and that your spirit will be able to handle it. Please, please, please. I'm not going to say we're like special cases, but in quotes, we kind of are. But please do what's best for you. I'm only presenting this for those of you who are considering it and you wanted to hear what it was to get into it and getting out of it. So with that, I want to end the conversation with where are you now, Brady? And by the way, this is Brady's Instagram. So if you want to follow him on Instagram, there it is. Where are you now, and what are you doing with your life?
Yeah, like I said, now I am working as the executive assistant for Prevention Access Campaign, Global Operations, getting to work, with PEPFAR, or incorporating U equals U, knowing the science of it, incorporating it into PEPFAR, guidelines, WHO, CDC World, or CDC Global, really trying to help, because I want everyone, I know that U equals U is a big part of also that helped lift me up out of a lot of my mental funk that I had going on up here. And it led me to where I am today. And I also don't want people to think that, I still have fear every day, like Zeke said, I still have daily pain every day because of my pancreatitis, but every day I have to challenge that fear, and I have to overcome that fear every day. And knowing that, well, for today, this is what I'm going to do. And this is what I'm going to attempt to do. And giving myself the grace that if I don't accomplish everything that I want to do that day, it's still okay. because at the end of the day, I still have my job. I still have my husband. I still have people around me that love me. And, as of today, I am okay. Tomorrow is another day, is another story. I have no idea, but I'm not going to worry about that, even though that little that voice of fear is still back there. It's a lot quieter. I've learned how to quieten it a little bit, but I don't know if there's any way to ever make it go away. I just am appreciative for today, knowing what I can do today, and I just hope that my higher power lets me do it again tomorrow.
Awesome. And I had the pleasure of, I just happened to be in New York the weekend that Brady got married. So congratulations. That was such a wonderful wedding. It was so good to be in Central Park and at a wedding.
I can't believe we just celebrated a 3-year anniversary. It does not seem like it was
crazy,
that long.
Crazy. And then you're headed to Montreal for the international.
Yes. Yeah. We're going to be holding the very first ever U equals U Global Summit the day before AIDS 2022 begins in Montreal. So there has been a lot of work going into the logistics of that, making sure speakers are lined up, and granted, there are other organizations that are taking care of a lot of that. So just even being able to be involved and at the table and in these rooms, I have learned so much, and I am so grateful to get out of my own little HIV Tennessee bubble, and seeing how things and systems work around the world, and having the opportunity to get to try to change those for my HIV community, so that those of us living with HIV get everything that we need to thrive and improve our quality of life. And so it's just a humbling job, and I am grateful every morning for it.
Well, so if anybody's going to be at the international conference, please stop by and say hi to Brady and congratulate him. Charles, where are you now?
Well, first of all, I want to say that these 3 other bitches are all like partnered up and married. Me, I am single and willing.
This is not your personal ad place. This is not Craigslist.
You gotta grab it where you can, sweetie.
Not Craigslist. Are you lonely?
Doesn't he look it?
No, I'm perfectly fine. But I am a contributing editor for thebody.com. I also host a twice monthly Instagram show for them called At Home With, where I have had the miracles. Like, I've had 2 out of the 3 of you guys on my show. But I've also talked to like Javier Munoz and Andre DeShields from Broadway and Greg Louganis and Dr. Diskalakis from the CDC. Like, I've really had some amazing powerhouses on the show. And so I'm also contributing writer for Pause Magazine. So I'm like working on a couple different articles for them right now. And I have some other things in the fire of other things that I'm writing and working on, but it's all creative work. That is something, as I've always been an artist, I'm an actor, I'm a musician, and someone had to tell me recently when I was bitching, as I often do, that I'm poor. And he goes, well, but you live in New York City and you make your living as a writer. Wow. And I had to like, oh yeah, I think I'll just be grateful and be quiet and eat my sandwich. So
by the way, if you are not following Charles's Instagram, follow him. Check out his interviews. They're so amazing. He has some great people. I've had the pleasure of being a guest, I think, twice now on your show.
Mm-hmm. I think so. Yeah.
And but go check him out. His writing is exceptional. Go check out his website. Check out his web series. I'm manifesting that one day Charles and I get to act on something together. And I've had the pleasure of meeting his family. We coincided in Phoenix, and I was able to meet his mom and his sister, and it was amazing. So thank you for that.
It was intense. It was really funny.
We profess this hate in public, but I love this. I love this man. He became my cousin the day I met him. So I love him.
Yes, sarcasm is our language of love.
You know, if I can't say something nasty at him once, why exist?
Right? I love it.
And Zeke, what are you doing now?
Okay, wow. So I guess kind of earlier you mentioned about the two personalities, 2 embodiments of you. So I guess when you think of Zeke and then you think about Mr. Murton, you got 2 different little ways to kind of approach this. First of all, I want to say that the shares from Charles and Brady were commendable. I really found a lot of commonalities there. I think that's pretty cool. So where am I now? If you build it, they will come. So back in, when the world was falling apart around me in November of a couple of years ago, things were, well, actually last year, November. See, that's how quickly we heal in certain cases. I transitioned to this new role, novel. Literally, I was able to, the skill set that I had that was always kind of dumbed down by other energies that were around me. There was an opening in the universe where I was, amazingly welcomed. And with, to my surprise, I was wanted. They were like, if you get that guy, things will happen out here. So I went into this. They literally built me an office in the nucleus of San Antonio AIDS Foundation. Historically, it's the largest and the most robust ASO in San Antonio. It was always like my holy grail when I started out, as a volunteer, and thought, what if I could make it there one day? It's micro and macro, but for me, for the way I look at life and my mindset of, one person at a time, maybe fishing them out and being of service. That's where I'm at. I love it. The people are fantastic. The patients are tremendous. I am a early intervention specialist medical case manager. So I developed this like hybrid of two different roles. So it's really intensive, and it's intensive on me, not the consumer, just trying to kind of ensure that linkage. And that's really my passion. I kind of go there. And it is work, to Charles's point. It's hard. There's also a lot of writing. It's just in a different context. But then when we talk about Zeke, the professional for now, that's fleeting, and that's important, right? It's part of our construct, part of our identity. But when I talk about Zeke, my husband and I have known each other for 18 years in August. We've been married. I got married on my 50th birthday a couple of years ago in the middle of a pandemic in a church. For somebody like myself with my upbringing and my identity, who I am, all of these things were just unattainable, and then add the disability, part of that, which is what we're talking about now. But being able to have that support system of my husband and family, and knowing that I didn't do it alone, and Mac, Paul Kawada, you, Daniel, all these wonderful people that were just put in front of me. So where I am now is exactly where I'm meant to be.
I feel the exact same way, Zeke. I'm exactly where I'm supposed to be as well.
Awesome.
I'm supposed to be making more money. I need to be making more money. I'm supposed to be making more money. I'm supposed to be in a high-rise apartment with a big window.
For you, Charles.
Yes.
And I want to just throw in Mike so that you guys can know whether this is my Instagram if you want to follow me there. But after a couple of years of trying to figure out where I belonged and what I wanted to do, I have the honor of being one of the 6 members of the Positively Fearless campaign for Janssen Pharmaceuticals, which I've been for 4 years, and it's an amazing position to be able to represent the Latino community in Positively Fearless. I also, during the lockdown, took a lot of workshops and got certified as a trainer for the National Minority AIDS Council. So now I do trainings for them throughout the country, which is really amazing. I've always wanted to work with them somehow, and to be able to be part of their roster is amazing. And I'm still doing it. I'm a language justice consultant for them, translating one of the trainings into Spanish, which we're bringing to Puerto Rico. I forgot to mention that about Charles. We're both going to be in Puerto Rico for the conference. So this is so for those of you out there, and again, this is not look at us now or look what we're doing. And this is if this is a step that you want to take, we're here with you. We've been through it. If you're watching this on replay, please ask questions, make comments. I promise we'll answer as many as we can. I'll keep an eye out on the thread. Is it scary? Yes.
Yes.
Will it work your nerves? Most probably.
Absolutely.
But can you do it? I think so.
Affirmative.
Any last words before we go, gentlemen?
Love y'all. Thank you for the opportunity.
Thank you so much. I agree. Thanks.
All right. Don't go anywhere. I'm sorry. Go ahead. See.
I said, Daniel, you're amazing.
Oh, thank you.
And everybody get tested. Know your status.
That's a good ending. Yeah. You equals you. Check in, prep, get tested, and go check us out. Remember, go check us out on our Instagrams. I'm going to put y'all in the green room while I say goodbye. Don't go anywhere. I'll be right back for y'all. So for everyone watching, thank you so much for joining us in this hour. Again, what happens after disability? We don't know. We just know that we jumped out and got pushed out, and we did the best we can. If you're on disability and this is a step you want to take, learn, train, get certified, do workshops, start prepping your dream, figure out what you want to do with your life. And for this particular case, we're talking about, because we're all in HIV, but you can be disabled from anything. But if this is a step you want to take, we're right there with you. It's a personal journey, but we're at the end of the tunnel lighting the light for you. So we hope you watch it. I want to remind all of you that we have shows during the week. Check us out on Wednesdays with the Christian and Daniel show, on Fridays, the Cardivo, and on Saturdays, Put It Together. Make sure you follow us on Facebook, Twitter, YouTube, and LinkedIn. If you follow us on YouTube, make sure you subscribe and hit the notification bell. It'll let you know every time there's a new show. For now, I want to thank my guests, Brady, Dale, Charles, and Zeke for the show. Some of my favorite people, and I'm so glad I got to share this moment with you. For now, I want to thank you, and remember, put it together. We'll see you next time. Bye-bye.